80 years ago today, bells rang out all across Canada as well and liberated Europe to celebrate Nazi Germany's unconditional surrender to the Allied forces. Well, veteran Canadian journalist Peter Mansbridge has covered this anniversary for decades, doing live TV broadcasts for CBC television from the Netherlands, which Canadian soldiers liberated, of course, and reporting from France, where Allied soldiers landed on D-Day. So we thought we'd touch base with Peter Mansbridge and hear what he's thinking about on this special 80th anniversary. And the former host of CBC Television's The National joins us from Scotland, actually, and he's here via Zoom. Hi to you.
Hey, Marcy. Good to talk to you.
You too. So what are you thinking about today? 80 years.
Well, 80 years, it's amazing, and it's especially amazing that, a good number of vets are still around to share this moment with us, and some of them went overseas to take part in the various ceremonies that will take part. Listen, it was a horrible war. More than 50 million people died worldwide in that war, 45,000 of them from Canada. So today and that day are kind of odd. In one way, you're celebrating, and the other way, there's relief, there's reflection, there's remembrance. But the bottom line on VE Day was celebration. And that's why you still see the old pictures, whether it was in London or New York or Toronto or wherever it might be, and I'm sure there was some in Winnipeg, where there was, kind of dancing in the street. There were strangers hugging each other, kissing each other, because it was over, because people were coming home, the lucky ones. Some would never come home. But they were remembered that night, and especially so in the homes that they'd left to go overseas to fight in. So it's a day of many different emotions still today.
May 8th, 1945, you're drawing on, the scenes in Europe, but also the scenes here in Canada, as you alluded to, Peter. Can you reflect on a story or maybe stories that you've shared over the years, from Canada, people that you've met, who would have lived this?
Well, you never forget the veterans you meet, whether it was, in the Netherlands at those ceremonies or in France and the D-Day ceremonies. These guys were amazing. Most of them were many of them were from small towns on the prairies, in southwestern Ontario, Quebec, the Maritimes, Newfoundland, even though Newfoundland at that time wasn't part of Canada. But they were all volunteers. Nobody forced them to go. Almost all of them were volunteers. They believed that it was the duty to go and fight for their country and fight for future generations, people like us, who have managed to live in the kind of country that we live in, thanks to a lot of what they did during the Second World War. So when you meet these fellows, whether it's in France or in the Netherlands or Belgium or wherever it may be, Italy, who go back to where they had fought, it's a moving experience, and it's one that we should never take for granted, because we're losing these fellows. It won't be long before none of them left. Many of them are just who went over this week, or over 100. So they're quite something.
What are the big lessons, do you think, of the Second World War that historians are saying right now are key for our current era?
Well, historians can be split on things like this, as we know, and there's always a great deal of discussion about the value of war. But some wars are worth fighting, and that's what the veterans will tell you, that this was one of them, that some things are worth dying for. And a lot of people died as a result of that war, both military people and civilians. But it was about a way of life. And it was about ending a Nazi scourge, one we didn't want to see repeated in our country. And that's why these fellows went overseas and joined, whether it was, the Air Force or the Army or the Navy, because they believed it was the right thing to do. And you see that kind of echoed in conflicts today. You certainly see it echoed in Ukraine, where the Ukrainian people believe it's worth fighting and dying for to save our country. from somebody else's, attempt to control our lives. So, yes, some things are worth dying for.
Thank you for the reflection, Peter, and thank you so much for being on with us this morning. Appreciate it. Nice to see you.
Nice to see you, Marcy. Take care.
You too. Peter Mansbridge, a former host of CBC Television's The National, chief correspondent for CBC News. He now produces a podcast called The Bridge Daily. We reached him in Scotland this morning.